All right, so let's continue with the graphs. So as you may remember from the beginning, so we had three graphs side by side. The first one was a bar chart, and the second one was a donut chart, and the third one was also a donut chart. So the first one defines number of commits made per branch, the second one per connector, and the last one was per contributor. So let's start then. I'm gonna reference the container again, and let's say with graphs. So as you may remember at the beginning, we have created this container called graphs. So we are referencing that. So I'm going to say with graphs and do the same thing. I'm going to creating my subheader. So st.subheader, this will be my graphs, and let's save it. Now we have a new section called graphs. At first, we need to define the columns again. So I'm going to say columns for charts, and the first one will be branch graph column. The second one will be connector graph column, and the last one will be collaborator graph column. So we're going to create a column for each of these, and we are creating 3 columns. But I want the first one to be a bit wider, so I'm going to create a list again, defining the ratio for each graph. So I'm going to say the first one will be 2, the others will be 1. Okay, so the first one's width will be 2 times the other ones. So let's create our first graph then, the branch graph. Let's do it. I'm gonna do the same thing, and this one will be the branch graph. All right, so let's create our first branch graph. So this branch will contain 2 things. At the x-axis, I will have my branch names, and the y-axis, I will have the number of commits made. So let's go to GitHub again, and let's see how that looks like in the repo. And the branch object has a couple attributes, such as the branch name. So branch name will be my x-axis, and then I want to get the branch commits, and I want to get the commits total count, right? So let's see, st.write, I'm going to say st.write, and first I want to get for each branch in branches list. So as you may remember, our branches is stored in a variable called branches. So I'm looping through that list, and first I want to get their b.name. So I'm typing b.name, and then I want to get their b.commits, right, to get the commits, and then from the commits I want to get the total count. I'm simply going to type in total count, and this will be in a list as well. So I'm going to save this, come back, and just like that. So we have kind of like a nested list. In each list, I have the first item as my name and the second item as the total count. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to create a data frame out of it. So let's first create a variable called branch count. So this will equal to PD. We're referencing to Panda, and then saying data frame. So we're going to create a data frame out of this list. Copy and paste. And then I'm going to type in st.branch count. Save it and see how that looks like. So now we have a data frame. The first column is named as 0 and the second one is 1, but the structure is correct. So let's rename columns. I'm going to say branch counts, referencing to the data frame, and its columns will equal to, we're going to create a new list, and the first column will be called as branch name, and the second column will be called as total comments. Save it. And now the branch name, total comments. The structure is good. All right, great. So let's create our first graph. So I'm going to say create graph and create a new variable called branch count graph. So this will store my graph. I'm going to say px dot, referencing to the plotly express as px, and let's say px dot bar. So this is going to be a bar chart, right? And we are referencing to the first data frame, which is in this case branch underscore counts. And our x-axis will be the branch counts dot branch name. So we are referencing the x-axis to the first column, and the y-axis will be branch underscore counts dot total commits. So the y-axis will be our second column. I'm gonna save this again. So now we have created our figure actually, but we're not seeing it because we haven't write it. So I'm gonna say branch st.write branch underscore count underscore graph and save it. Now we should be able to see a graph. So the first thing that I want to do is I want to actually color it by the branch names. So I'm going to add a new variable called color, and it's going to color it by branch counts dot branch name, referencing to the first column. Save it. And oops, branch count is not defined because it's not branch count, it's branch counts. Save it. And just like that, now each item has a unique color. Okay, so we have created our graph, but I want to do a couple of things about it, such as I don't want to see that legend. I want to set its margin and height, etc. So to update the layout of the graph, we are using update layout function. So I'm going to say branch count graph, referencing to the figure, update underscore layout to update the layout of that figure. We're going to say show legend equals to false and save it. And show legend is not with a capital A, is not with a capital L. So I'm going to say, I'm going to fix that. And now the legend is gone. Let's continue. I'm going to set its height as 220. And then I'm going to set its margin as a dictionary. And in this dictionary, I'm going to say its left margin will be 1, right margin will be 1, top will be 1, and bottom will be 1. And save it. Oops, I think I've added another comma in there. And great, so now we have added it. I'm gonna change that to Rhino to BIM to see it a bit better. All right, so we have set the margins and no legend, and the height is set as 220. So what do we do now? We need to add this graph into our columns. So as we did with the cards, we reference to the column. In this case, it's called as branch graph column. And then there is a special method for plotly charts in Streamlit called plotly underscore chart. And then I'm going to reference to my graph first, which is called branch count graph, and save it. Oh, I made a typo error. Plotly chart, not plotly, plotly. Oops, another one, plotly chart. Okay, great. So now the first one is actually associated with the column, but the width of it is still using the page width. I'm going to define a new variable and say use the column width. And it's simply use container width. And it's going to be equal to true. Save it now. Now it's going to use the column's width. Great. So our branch is in its place. So we have done it. We have created our very first branch column. I'm going to do the same thing, but for the connector chart and for the contributor chart as well. So those are going to be, I think, a bit easier because now you have the grasp of how a Streamlit figure works. We're going to do a bit faster in that sense, I think. So let's continue. I'm going to create a new section and name it as connector graph or connector chart. And it's going to be a donut. And in here, first, I'm going to get my commits to a data frame again. So pd.data frame. And from dictionary, we're going to do a from dictionary. So for each commit, I'm going to loop through commits. Do what? Convert each commit into a dictionary, and then we are going to create a data frame out of dictionary. That's what we're doing. And then I'm going to say st.write commits to see how that commits looks like in a data frame. All right, so commits, this is how commits looks like in a data frame. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to get the apps from this data frame, and its column is called as source application. So let's get this column, get apps from data frame. So I'm going to create a new variable called apps, and from the commits data frame, let's get the source application column right here, right? So I'm going to st.write apps this time. So see how my apps looks like. And this is how it looks like in a data frame. So what I'm going to do is first I'm going to reset the index of this apps column. So I'm going to say apps equals to apps dot. First, I'm going to get the unique values from this data frame using the value counts method. And then I'm going to reset the index of that and save it. And let's see how that looks like. So now we have a unique value as well as how many times they occur in that data frame. So 9, 2, and 1. Great. So let's rename our columns. The first column will be my app and the second column will be the count. So that's what I'm going to do. Let's rename columns. And this is going to be apps.columns. We're doing the same thing. The first one will be app, and the second one will be the count. And just like that, app and count. So this time we are creating a donut chart. So let's create it. We are going to do I'm going to define a new variable called fig. This is going to be my figure. I'm going to say px.pie. So what we are going to do is we are going to create a pie chart, and then we're going to create a hole inside of that, and that will basically be our donut chart. So let's do it now. So px.pie expects a couple inputs. The first one will be my data frame, and then we're going to define the names, the values, the names, the values, and a hole. So this way it'll be a donut chart. So let's do it. Our data frame will be the apps data frame. So the names will be from the apps data frame, reference the app column. So the values will be from the apps data frame. Let's reference the count column. And let's save it as it is now. And then I'm going to type in st.write figure to see it. All right, so great. This is a pie chart now. So I'm going to add a new attribute at the end called whole and create a whole at 0.5. And voila, donut chart. So our figure is ready. We're going to do the same thing as we did for the bar chart and update the layout. So I'm going to say fig.update layout. Let's do the same thing. I don't want to see the legend, so show legend will be a false. Oops. Oh, not with T, but with D. All right, the legend is gone. Let's continue. We're going to set the margin as a dictionary again, and L to right to top and bottom. They all will equal to 2. And then I'm going to set its height as 200 and save it. Okay, great. So our figure is set. What I'm going to do is I'm going to add this figure into its column. And how do we do that? We have already defined a column for it in right here, connector graph column. So connector graph column dot plotly underscore chart. And we are using the fig, and we're going to use the container width again, equals to true, save it. And just like that, it's right here. Let's continue with the collaborator chart. I'm going to do the same thing. They're going to be pretty much the same. So collaborator chart, it's going to be a donut. And all right. So again, first I need to get the authors from the comments. So first I'm going to type in st.write. And I know that I have converted my commits into a data frame right here. So let's type in st.commits to see how my commits looks like. So each commit has a author name, as you can see, and they have a different values in here. So I am going to say, let's get the unique values from this commits as well, right? So since it's already in data frame, I'm going to create a new variable called authors. And from the commits data frame, let's get the author name. I'm going to type in author name and st.write authors. All right, so the author names are listed in here. I'm going to do the same thing as we did for the connectors and get the unique values and reset index. First, I'm going to do a authors equals to authors dot value counts. You know what? I can actually add that into right here. So value counts and get the reset index and delete this. So let's see how that looks like. Oops. Let's change that to Rhino to BIM. And reset index is actually a method. All right, so I have the index and author name. I think I need to rename my columns. So let's do that. Rename columns, authors dot columns equals to, the first one will be my author and the second one will be the count. So I'm going to say the first one will be author and the second one will be the count. Let's save it now. Now each column has the correct name. Okay, so let's create the chart. I'm going to name this as fig again. and not fig, maybe author fig. And this is also going to be a pie chart, px.pie. And the data frame we are using is called as authors. So this is going to be the authors. And the names will be authors. From the authors data frame, get the author column. So I'm going to type in author. And the values will be from the authors data frame, get the count column. So I'm going to say count. And then we are going to make it as a donut chart. I'm going to do the same thing as we did right here and define a whole. It's going to be the half of it. Okay, so we have created our chart. Let's see what that looks like. I'm going to say author fig. All right, so it's right here. And let's do the same thing as we did and update its layout. And I'm just going to copy and paste it. And instead of fig, I'm going to say author fig and save it. It's going to have the same thing. And let's copy and paste again to add it to its corresponding column. Instead of connector graph column, we are going to use the collaborator graph column. I'm going to say collaborator graph column. It's not graph, it's actually graph. And save. All right, great. It's added right here and it's working just fine. So we have done it. I'm actually going to delete this guy. And yeah, so we have created our collaborator chart. We have created the connector chart as well as the branch graph. Okay, so in the next part, we are going to create the timeline / line chart kind of thing that shows how many commits made. See you in the next one.